Hey everybody, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to record this lecture about the Civil War. These are the first couple of videos about it. So our central historical question that we're trying to answer when we're talking about the Civil War is, how did a war to preserve the Union become a war to end slavery? And so what we're going to talk about in these first couple of videos is um, some slave rebellions that took place and the resulting impact of those. Um, some issues going on in antebellum society regarding slavery, abolition movement, and then we'll talk about what are the causes really of the Civil War. And then in later videos, we'll get into some actual events and really dig into answering this question, but we've got to build our background knowledge first. So that's what we're doing in this first few videos here. And so make sure you're paying attention, make sure you're taking some notes, and let's go on this journey together. So first of all, let's talk about some slave rebellions. Okay, some that we might be familiar with from early in the semester. The Stono Rebellion in 1739. Really, the key thing to remember about this is that the South Carolina slaves are going to flee towards Florida, and they're basically going to be trying to killing whites. Again, they're trying to get away from slavery. As you can see in the picture here, it says they were waving flags and shouting liberty. They don't make it, and what it really does is it just leads South Carolina to pass more strict and stringent slave laws and to restrict the movement of enslaved people. Another slave rebellion is led by Gabriel Prosser in 1789, about 50 years after the Stono Rebellion, and this is kind of a print here of Gabriel Prosser. He may or may not have looked like that. So Gabriel is a blacksmith in Virginia, an enslaved person. And he's going to plan a military revolt, and he recruits 150 men to do so. Of course, it did not materialize, and he and 26 others were hanged. But still, this resistance to slavery, which is going to strike fear in the hearts of many white slave owners, and just lead to more strict rules and laws against enslaved people. Denmark Vesey, or Denmark Vesey. This is a statue of him here. Denmark Vesey is what's known as a mulatto, which means basically that he was more light-skinned in Charleston. And he's going to plan what would be the largest ever revolt in 1822, but it never really formed, never really got the ground running. And an informer is the one who kind of snitched, basically, on Denmark Vesey. And, of course, he was also publicly hanged. The thing to note here is that there were resistance, as we learned earlier in the week, that there were armed attempts of revolt and rebellion, even though many of the slaves who did revolt or try to rebel in this manner knew that it would cost them their lives potentially. But they did it anyway because they were trying to resist and get out from that oppression. The one that meant the most leading to the Civil War, I should say, and maybe meant the most is probably not the best way to say it, but the one that has the most impact is Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. His rebellion is going to come after, some big issues regarding slavery and the Missouri Compromise and stuff like that. But what it's going to do, the impact of it is the thing that has the most impact here. His is going to be kind of successful, but very extremely violent. As you can see here, about 60 Virginians are going to be killed. And it's mostly children and women who would be killed. And the killing itself actually slowed down the revolt and prevented it from being able to capture an armory, which was Nat Turner and those who followed him, their plan. It's going to be the largest slave revolt ever in the South. And over 100 slaves are going to be killed in response. And Turner, of course, was hanged. But the significance of this is what's important. It's going to produce a wave of anxiety among the Southern plantation owners. It's going to result in much, much more harsh laws of slavery itself and of enslaved people. It's also going to create something called white paranoia in the South, this fear of possible slave revolts, of more coming up as a result. So there's this fear that it won't just be Nat Turner, that it could potentially be more than just him. And that's going to increase the desire to restrict the movement of enslaved people. And really, if you think about it, really instill in the minds of many Southern white people this fear of black skin, this fear of black people. It's going to infuriate abolitionists, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they will be sending propaganda throughout the South as a result about that the reason Nat Turner was creating this rebellion and killing people was because he was an enslaved person. He's being held against his will. And while that seems like duh, but at the same time, when everything about your life is to structure oppression against another group of people due to discrimination and racism, you don't see it that way. You don't see that the reason they're revolting is because you're oppressing them. They see it as, oh, you're rebelling against me and my authority. That's kind of the idea of the white Southerners and white people in general at this time. And they believe that of course, as I said, that there was this racial superiority, and that was the justification for slavery. That was all that they needed. But Nat Turner's rebellion is really going to pave this way and really kind of spark this sort of paranoia, as we see here in this picture, this wood print depicting what Nat Turner would do and did to people, and killing the hundreds of people. And you can see the slaves here are looking more aggressive with their weapons drawn, and the white people are just kind of fearful and pulling back. And they call it the horrid massacre in Virginia. And those are some of the things that I just wanted to convey with the slave rebellion, is that there wasn't just one isolated incident. There was much more than just the ones that I've talked about here. But the one that really kind of creates this paranoia and fear in the hearts of Southern white people is Nat Turner's rebellion. And that's going to cause more strict rules and requirements against enslaved people, against black people in general, both free and enslaved. And it's going to increase this paranoia and solidify this racial superiority against black people among the white people. In the next video, we'll talk about antebellum society.